So here are some reasons why older adults, they use drugs. And arthritis or other pain is very common among older adults, those 60 or 65 and above. And sometimes their sleep is out of whack. They also use drugs. They have anxiety and depression. That's another main reason why they use drugs. And some older adults, they use drugs because they have functional impairment. Because of that, they use cannabis for medical reasons. And I'm not making this up. Don't believe me, you go check out these articles. And for the second article, older adults use drugs for all these chronic conditions. Their sample is quite small. It's about 80. So we can see that older adults, they use drugs mainly for health reasons. The handful of research that focus on older adults, this is what they found. Do you think they only use drugs for medical reasons? Do you think this is all the story? Or do they use drugs for other reasons? Do you know? Do older people use drugs for other reasons? Do you know? Because I told you, when this was taught online, some of my students older than me, they told me their parents and some of the students around your age, they say their grandparents use drugs for the same reasons we just saw. Health reasons. And what kind of drugs do they use and where did they get the drugs? According to published articles, they mainly use cannabis, we've been through this, marijuana, sometimes opioid, and sometimes cannabidiol only products. I think this is related to cannabis. And most of them got their drugs from dispensary. So it's legit. And this percentage again is based on this article with a small sample. So this is the kind of drugs they normally use and where they got their drugs. All from, not all, mostly from legal sources. So it seems that doctors are aware, family members are aware, caretakers are aware if they got their drugs from legit sources. And are older adults all the same, or there's a diversity among older adults? Do people go through the aging process in the same way, or aging is different for different people? Go figure. So, among older adults, who are more likely to use drugs? Males, single people, those with mental health issues, those with multiple chronic health conditions. We've been through this to ease their pain. We've been through this. And those with a history of other substance use, like alcohol, tobacco, illicit drugs, prescription drugs. If they have a history of using all these substances, they are also more likely to use some of these drugs. People use different substances and drugs simultaneously. Young people do that. Old people, they do that too. We just see it. We just see that. Any questions so far? And according to research, when older adults, they use drugs, this is not a secret. Family members know. Like how my students did their debate. They know their parents, grandparents use drugs to ease their pain. And their friends know. It's never a secret. Even their doctors, nurses, other healthcare providers, they know. It's never a secret. And how often do old people use drugs? And in what ways do they use drugs? They use it quite often, according to research. They use it daily, weekly, quite often, like young people. And many of them are first-time users. They only use it when they hit a certain age due to pain, mainly due to chronic health conditions. It seems that according to research, older adults do not abuse drugs. They use it for medical or legit reasons. But some use it for recreation, for leisure. They do it through smoking, a third of them. And some use it through tinctures. Some use it through lotions. I think there's an overlap. Some may use it through 2 or more methods because it adds up more to 100%, as you can see. And this is based on a small sample, only 83. And I tried to find other articles on how they use drugs. I could not find any. It seems that there are very few research done on why, how, where older adults use drugs. Most research focus on younger adults, teenagers, middle-aged folks, not so much on older adults. And I published a paper on alcohol use among older adults 10 years ago. And my findings suggest that usually when older adults, when they have a partner or a spouse, whether it's heterosexual couples or same-sex couples, it doesn't matter. Regardless of their sexual orientation, it doesn't matter. When they have a partner, if they live with somebody or a spouse who also uses alcohol or drugs, they are more likely to accompany their spouse to use drugs, to use tobacco, to use alcohol. I think the same can be said for drugs, recreational use of drugs, not medical use. Sometimes when you have somebody you know who use drugs, and maybe it's fun, so they do it together, common sense, right? And why do older adults use drugs? One important factor is because of the media, commercials, advertising in different avenues, according to research. And some older adults, they are just passively viewing those commercials on TV, on the internet, in other avenues, on magazines. And some, if they have been using drugs, maybe when they were younger, for recreational purposes, when they were healthier and younger, these older adults are classified as active seekers. So this research, they classify older adults who are exposed to commercials through different media platforms. One group are the passive observers. They don't actively seek out commercials related to the latest drugs, different brands of drugs. They are just curious. Or maybe they have some pain and they are just doing research to see whether they should use drugs or not. And these active seekers, they have been using drugs. They are actively seeking, mainly through internet browsers, search engines, on specific kinds of drugs. They have been using drugs. They have experience with drugs. And maybe they just check out the latest commercials. They already know something about drugs. So, for these two groups of people, the avenues they explore differ according to research. Passive viewers are more likely to get info about commercials through social media platforms, through online, and through text and email, maybe through people they know. And active seekers, they mainly use search engines, according to research. So far, only one article published about how commercials advertising can influence older adults' drug use. And again, I tried to find another article that cites this article. I could not find any. The rest of the later articles that cite this Dr. Krauss article focus on adolescents, teenagers, young adults. Go figure. And we know, as we get older, we experience more and more and more pain. Aging is something we cannot avoid. We've been through this. You can choose whether to get married or not, or just to live with a partner and be happy. And you can choose to go to college or not. You can choose among different careers, but we cannot choose whether we want to go through aging or not. All these cutting-edge technology that claim that they can delay and prevent aging, they are still at their initial phases. So I would say to this day, we cannot choose whether we want to go through aging or not. We cannot avoid at this stage. I don't know about your generation, you are younger than me. But for me, I definitely go through aging. I'm 48 this year. And the purpose, these two groups of older adults use drugs. We don't know why passive viewers use drugs. It's not stated in their qualitative interviews. This, I don't recall how the study was conducted. Maybe it's through unstructured interview, where the interviewer go with the flow. They ask question, see how people respond, ask another question, see how they respond, ask another question. This is what we mean by unstructured interview. Questionnaire were not written beforehand. So because of that, they did not know, did not state why passive observers use drugs? Is that due to recreation, medical, or both? We don't know. But most active seekers, they use drugs for medical and recreational reasons. And another 36% of active seekers use drugs for health reasons. And another small percentage of active seekers use drugs only for recreation. Any questions so far? And what's the perceptions of older adults in terms of drug use? It seems that according to research, the majority of older adults say that cannabis helps with their chronic condition. Cannabis helps to ease their pain. And another research found that older adults consider recreational use of drugs risky. They do their best to avoid that, but they think that using drugs for health reasons is unavoidable at their age. And using drugs to relieve pain is unavoidable, and it can be safe if they use it wisely. So this is how older adults perceive using drugs. It's very different from how teenagers, adolescents, young adults, or middle-aged folks perceive why they use drugs. But older adults, this is an understudied segment of population. Drug use, cigarette use, alcohol abuse among older adults. They do that very often, but it remains to be understudied. Any questions so far? Make sure you are clear because you have a debate, and this short PDF file provides a background for your debate. In your debate, you are going to justify why or should older adults be allowed to use drugs. And this can serve as a good background, aside from the other two articles you have to read. And what are the consequences of drug use for older adults? The consequences differ for older adults if you compare them to teenagers, adolescents, young adults, and middle-aged folks. They develop all kinds of health problems, or their pre-existing health problems intensify when they use drugs. They ease their pain, but maybe it causes other different kinds of non-cancer pain. And it increases their risk for heart disease, stroke, myocardial infarction, or sometimes they experience cyclical vomiting. And sometimes if they use too much, injuries can happen when they are not very alert. And because of the increase of all these risks for all these health conditions, older adults who use drugs have higher rates of outpatient, inpatient, and emergency care usage. These are the consequences of drug use for old people. So this concludes an overview of why older adults use drugs. And make sure you are clear. If not, ask question right now, because you have to do